First of all, I'm gonna stop screen sharing now, but wanted to welcome you all to the Clean Up TVA Coalition virtual press conference and launch. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Brady Watson. I'm with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and I'll be your MC for today's festivities. To start us off, I'm just going to give a little bit of background about kind of our nexus as a coalition before I hand it off to our speakers. But we are a coalition working to propel TVA into a just, equitable, and fossil fuel-free energy future by 2030. Our coalition formed back in 2021 and is made up of diverse member organizations from around the TVA service territory. And our objective is to transform the Tennessee Valley Authority into a green democratic utility by preventing new fossil gas development and accelerating a just transition to a fossil fuel-free, affordable, and renewable energy system for all communities. We've got a website that just launched today as well. You can check it out at cleanuptva.org. And with that, I will kick it over to Sudeep to give a little bit about some background on why we formed.
Yeah, thanks, Brady. Again, my name is Sudeep. I use he, him pronouns, and I am an organizer with the Sunrise Movement in Nashville, Tennessee. Not only our hub, but the Knoxville hub as well of Sunrise Movement are both coalition members of Clean Up TVA, and we're really proud to be so. Just a little bit of background. Sunrise is a group of young people that are trying to respond to the climate crisis at the adequate scale that is necessary. And as people in the South, like, TVA really is an institution. It might be one of the most important institutions in the South and most monumental institutions towards the history of the South when we think about how it came up through the New Deal and how it brought electricity to the South and all the people that gave up their lives, gave up their homes so the South could have electricity. Good or bad, TVA is this really powerful institution, and it is a government institution. And that means that we all belong to TVA or feel somewhat of a direct relationship with TVA that other regions in the United States may not necessarily have. So that's really powerful for us. But that also means that when TVA makes decisions, those decisions are directly going to impact us in the South. And we're going to see the repercussions of those decisions decades to come. And right now, we're seeing TVA respond to the climate crisis, as well as the multitude of other crises we're facing right now, without the necessary infrastructure or necessary foresight that these crises require. So we know that right now is the moment on climate change where we decide whether or not we take action or we don't. We need to quickly switch to renewables. And we're seeing TVA make decisions like retiring coal way past 2030 and switching to natural gas, which is just another fossil fuel, despite every scientist warning that that's not what we should be doing, and TVA having every opportunity to implement renewables. Solar is at the cheapest it's been in a very long time. We're seeing lots of renewable options available, and we're seeing TVA just decline those and switch to natural gas like it's 2004. And that's just the Sunrise angle. We see lots of other organizations as part of this coalition coming and seeing this problem from a variety of angles, from things like energy democracy, where we're seeing natural gas companies. And even when it comes to renewable energy, we're seeing large companies taking on that portfolio rather than doing things like distributed energy. We're seeing a lack of democracy in that during COVID, I mean, public comments weren't really a thing. Other things such as conservation efforts when it comes to biodiversity, as well as what's happening in Memphis right now with coal ash relocation, where TVA is just completely ignoring the voices of minorities, people of color, as well as poor people. And as people that feel like we belong to TVA a little bit, because it's a public institution, and TVA has such a direct impact since all of our utilities are members or you are essentially have relationships with TVA that are very direct. This coalition was formed because we really see that TVA is a part of our history and who we are, and it really needs to transform like immediately if we're going to address these crises at the necessary scale. Thanks, Brady.
Thank you, Sadiq. Next, I'll pass it over to Pearl Walker.
Good morning. I am Pearl Walker, Environmental and Climate Justice Committee Chair for the Memphis Branch NAACP and organizer with Memphis Has the Power. Decisions devoid of public input and transparency exploit and harm the public. Last summer, TVA announced it was planning to dump toxic coal ash from the now closed Allen Steam plant at a location in Memphis. With little consultation with local communities or elected officials and no specific environmental analysis for their choice as to where they were going to dump the coal ash, they started dumping and hauling along a route that goes through marginalized communities. TVA announced they would pause their disposal plans in order to listen and engage with customers and local communities. Yet just a few months later, without informing the public, TVA started carrying out their plan and transporting and dumping the Allen plant coal ash to a landfill near predominantly Black residential communities, including the one I live in, which is Whitehaven. This coal ash from the Allen Steam plant totals 3 million cubic yards, enough to fill 2 Empire State Buildings and 21 football fields, and could negatively impact the health of the communities near the coal ash dumping and haul routes. To be clear, the coal ash needs to be moved from its current unsafe location at the Allen Steam plant. However, TVA failed to do its due diligence in order to ensure the best outcomes for communities it serves. So I don't live far from Republic Landfill, and I'm afraid of what may happen to my community. What if one of the trucks, as they come through our area, is in an accident? Will the trucks be able to absorb a crash? Will they crack open and this toxic coal ash just, goes all over the place? But we do feel that our community is in danger because these trucks are traveling through residential neighborhoods. At the end of the day, Memphis doesn't matter to TVA based on their actions and the fact that they don't give us enough input into these decisions that affect our homes, our communities, our personal lives. Memphis should not be at the mercy of TVA, and they should pick a more suitable location to relocate this coal ash to. As the nation's largest public company, and as mandated by the TVA Act, TVA has a duty to ensure that they not only provide power to their customers, but to provide safe power that doesn't harm the environment and those who depend on it, like myself. We see an opportunity for TVA to lead the way when it comes to shutting down its remaining coal plants, including Kingston and Cumberland, and responsibly and with public input, safely remove and store coal ash. The longer the Kingston and Cumberland plants continue to operate, the more toxic coal ash will have to be disposed of, and the more toxic pollution will be spewed out into the air. All future coal ash disposal must prioritize public input and environmental justice to ensure our communities are protected. Additionally, TVA must not invest in more dirty fossil fuel infrastructure like methane gas plants and pipelines, because they present environmental injustice concerns of their own, as methane is an even more potential greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide that comes from coal plants. With TVA's recent environmental track record, including the mismanagement of the Allen Steam plant coal ash disposal here in Memphis and the urgency of the climate crisis, we simply cannot afford to continue with the fossil fuel status quo. TVA must instead replace its coal plants with safe and renewable energy, such as solar plus storage, and leave the energy transition to 100% fossil fuel free by 2030, instead of keeping on its current trajectory to decarbonize well past 2050. As the nation's largest public power entity, TVA can be a model for the rest of the country to follow. And in closing, what is needed is a virtual public forum on coal ash to educate the public about coal ash, including legal and health considerations. TVA's plans to store coal ash from the Allen site at the Republic landfill, which is not too far from where I live in South Memphis, and renewable energy alternatives to coal and fossil gas. We need to bring insights to the discussions of the most at-risk areas here in Memphis. Thank you.
Thank you, Pearl. Next, I'll kick it over to Daniel Tate with Energy Alabama.
Hey folks, I'm Daniel Tate with Energy Alabama. Kind of picking up where Pearl left off, speaking of coal ash, TVA has been dumping on the people of Alabama for quite some time. And I think the people of Uniontown, who took a lot of the toxic coal ash after the Kingston coal ash spill, would warn and echo a lot of the comments that you heard from Pearl about the issues with coal ash and the environmental justice concerns in the Uniontown communities in Alabama. But despite that, and despite the impacts of coal and the negative consequences, both economically and environmentally, did TVA lean in to energy efficiency? Did TVA lean in to renewable energy? Did TVA lean in to battery storage? No, it did not. It cut its energy efficiency programs and is funding them at paltry levels. It cut almost all of its renewable energy programs, especially those that encourage distributed energy, those that we need to help many of our communities be more resilient. And it is in Alabama building new gas plants at the old Colbert location where there were the coal plant that was shut down. So instead of leaning into clean and sustainable energy to help us address some of these issues, TVA has doubled down on false solutions that will just perpetuate environmental justice and economic and energy burden and affordability concerns for Alabamians. And like many of my other panelists here today, we are here as part of this coalition to demand that TVA move quicker, to be in step with the IPCC, to be in step with the Biden administration and scientists all around the world who are saying that it is not just economically feasible and technologically feasible, but the right and moral thing to do to move to 100% sustainable energy as quickly as humanly possible.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Next, I'll pass it over to Gabby.
Hi, I'm Gabby Cerita. I'm with the Center for Biological Diversity and the Energy Justice Program. And we are coming together with other organizations as part of the TVA, the Clean Up TVA Coalition, to demand that TVA put communities in the climate first. Yesterday, the IPCC came out with yet another startling report of the dire consequences of inaction. This is the same story over and over. We're out of time, and the impact of greenhouse gas emissions on our planet is alarming. Fossil fuels are the most significant driver of the climate emergency, and we can't afford to keep pushing false solutions and deepening our reliance on dirty energy like gas. This crisis is really hitting close to home. I think just in the past year, we've seen the impacts of the climate emergency, from the tragic Kentucky tornado to the Memphis ice storm. Thousands of families have been left without power and homes. And this damage is just a sampling of what's to come. Climate science demands rapid emissions reduction and complete divestment from coal, oil, and gas. To preserve a livable planet, we must limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that means ending all coal, oil, and gas extraction by 2031. President Biden has already called for a carbon emission free electricity sector by 2035. Yet the fact of the matter is TVA isn't aligned with that goal. The agency has the second largest planned gas build out by 2030 And according to their 2019 IRP, TVA will still be producing at least 34 million tons of carbon emissions in 2038. Even more, TVA is delaying the transition to a fossil fuel region by implementing policies that discourage distributed energy, in addition to cutting cost-saving energy efficiency options. These decisions ultimately hurt customers and exacerbate energy burdens, which are disproportionately felt by low-wealth communities and communities of color. To put the climate and communities first means that TVA must immediately cut carbon emissions and tackle the energy and environmental justice crisis unfolding from continued dependence on fossil fuels. Gas is an environmental racism and public health hazard. The proportion of Black residents that live within 3 miles of a power plant is higher for gas than it is for coal. And with closer proximity to fossil fuel plants, these communities are also disproportionately exposed to harmful methane, particulate matter, and other pollutants. On top of this, the TVA service territory is marked by significant racial and wealth inequality, with low wealth communities and especially Black households disproportionately burdened by rising electricity bills. TVA needs to put the climate and communities first. We have the solutions to make that happen, and it's time that TVA finally put them in motion. To really tackle the climate emergency and ensure a resilient and affordable energy system for all Valley communities, TVA must immediately move past fossil fuels and advance a just transition to clean, renewable, and affordable energy like solar and energy efficiency. We're coming together to make it clear to TVA that people want this transformation, and TVA needs to work with us to make that happen. This is an opportunity for TVA to lead in tackling the greatest crisis of our time and model what a just transition to a clean, renewable energy future looks like. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. And I should also mention for folks that are viewing as attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box at the bottom right. We'll be shifting to Q&A here in just a bit. But for now, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Maggie Schober.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. I'll round out our panel. I'm Maggie Schober, Research Director for Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. And as you have heard from other speakers today, it is time to clean up TVA. We formed a coalition when we learned that TVA was planning to replace retiring coal plants with new gas plants and pipelines. We are calling on TVA to retire the Kingston and Cumberland coal plants as soon as possible and not to replace them with new dirty gas infrastructure. It's that simple. TVA has been peddling misinformation of late. One that particularly bothers me from TVA is that TVA is trying to use scare tactics about reliability generally and the tragedy that was Winter Storm Uri in particular to justify building new gas plants and pipelines. The truth is that TVA does not need new gas to keep the system reliable. And the unreliability of the gas system in Texas was the main driver of the extended electric outages during Winter Storm Uri. The truth is that TVA already has a significant amount of gas on its system. And the truth is that TVA has one of the largest hydro fleets in the country. There are utilities across the country and across the world that are replacing fossil fuels with renewables and storage to the benefit of their customers. TVA does not have to trade one fossil fuel for another. It simply does not. The talking points TVA is using to justify investments in fossil fuels instead of clean energy resources are based on out-of-date pricing and performance metrics. Renewables have come a long way in being able to balance variability and provide grid services, and they're cheaper than fossil fuels. The cost of energy storage decline every single year. TVA's analysis of how to replace these coal plants also leaves out an entire sector, investments it could be making in energy efficiency. With some of the highest bills in the country, the opportunity to lower all customers' bills by helping customers use less is a win-win-win situation. Yet TVA continues to claim that some customers don't want to invest in energy efficiency, while we are hearing the exact opposite. When asked by members of Congress doing their oversight duty, TVA CEO Jeff Lyash had the audacity to tell them that TVA's decarbonization trajectory is aligned with President Biden's executive orders. And this is simply not true. TVA has said it will reduce carbon by 80% by 2035. President Biden has stated the electric sector should be fully decarbonized by that date. Even Jeff Lyash can't make 80% equal 100%. It is true that TVA has reduced emissions significantly already. They've cut total direct emissions by half since its peak. But we can't stop there, and TVA's current plans to trade one fossil fuel for another would lock TVA's customers into a fossil fuel future for decades and would expose TVA customers to a volatile gas market just as the world is waking up to the political realities of relying heavily on natural gas. So the long and short of it is there are many, many reasons for TVA to choose to retire these two coal plants as soon as possible and replace them with clean, cheap, and reliable options. That is why we are in coalition, to stop TVA from trading one fossil fuel for another. Instead, it is time to clean up TVA. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to Brady.
That was great. Thank you so much, Maggie. Just a reminder, folks, if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to enter them using the Q&A feature at the bottom right. I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question, which is, what can TVA do right now to improve their standing on clean energy compared to other utilities in the Southeast and in the US? And I think I'll kick it over to Daniel for that one.
Sure, happy to take a stab. I have a lot of thoughts here, so I'll keep it pretty brief as I can. But you know, the obvious and most important theme you've heard here today is stop investments in new gas, new fossil fuels. So that is absolutely number one. And I want to underscore a point about that, is that out of all utilities, TVA should be intimately familiar with the cost of stranded assets and how it can burden ratepayers, customers of the Valley for decades. I mean, we've been down this road before as TVA with failed nuclear build-outs in the 70s and 80s. And I think customers would speak, and we certainly do on behalf of our members, to say, listen, we've got to learn from that history and not make the same mistake twice. The second thing I think that TVA can really do to stand out is, it's really got to go back to something that Sudeep said in terms of its history and its roots, and that's rooted in energy affordability and access for every single person living in the TVA area. That is why, in large part, it was created as part of the New Deal, and that's going to be something that it's not just enough to say, oh, we have low rates when people don't pay rates, they pay bills. And it is incumbent upon TVA as a federal agency and as that unique history that Sudeep talked about to go further and make sure that everybody here in the Valley actually has access to affordable energy that is clean.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Got another question here. President Biden's TVA Board of Directors will be having a hearing tomorrow in the Environment and Public Works Subcommittee in the Senate. How does TVA's board affect the direction of TVA? And I think for that one, I can pass it over to Maggie.
Yes, so this is a key piece. The TVA Board of Directors, which is appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate, is TVA's regulator. As SACE, we engage on utility matters around building of new gas plants, energy efficiency plans at state public service commissions. TVA as a federal entity is not subject to that level of regulation. If you think about your local municipal utility or cooperative, they each have a board or city council that is their regulator. The TVA board is that, and that's the role that they should play in making sure that TVA is on track. So we will be watching closely tomorrow as the nominees get their hearing in the Senate, and there are additional seats. There's one additional seat open as well, and two coming in May, which is just next month. So we'll also be watching closely for more nominees to be named in the coming weeks. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Maggie. We've got another question about energy efficiency. Kent asked, how can we assess TVA's ability to rapidly increase funding for energy efficiency upgrades throughout its service area? And what funding opportunities are available from other sources? And I'll kick that over to Maggie as well.
All right, and others feel free to chime in as well. The truth about TVA and energy efficiency is that they used to be doing better than they are now. So we know they can do better. The opportunity for them to ramp up their energy efficiency programs, as well as partner with national labs. Hey, there's one right here in TVA service territory doing really neat stuff on energy efficiency. So let's not just go through and set up the energy efficiency programs of the past. Let's develop that heat pump and smart thermostat program that can really show the whole utility industry what it is to move energy efficiency as a key tool to address both affordability and decarbonization. Anybody else want to chime in on that too?
Actually, we do have one question from Dave Fleshner. I'd like to go ahead and ask that if we can really quickly. And this will be our last question since we're already a little bit over time, but is TVA pursuing the lowest cost strategy in its long range power planning? Would solar, wind, and other renewable sources be cost competitive or even cheaper than natural gas? And how should TVA maintain reliability without gas or other intermittent generating sources? Daniel, maybe?
Sure, I can take a stab at this one. Yes, the lowest cost strategy, it would be renewable energy, things like battery storage, especially opening up things like the burgeoning EV market and making sure we're taking advantage of those resources. I have a unique position in that I was part of the last integrated resource plan and have watched, so I was on the committee, if you will, and have watched TVA essentially do the opposite of what many of us in the room were recommending, right? Lean into distributed energy, because if you look at the results of the last IRP, you'll notice that a large part or one of the most important metrics, right? Economics, the lowest cost resource there and total revenue requirement is lower for distributed energy resources. That's not news to TVA. They knew that, they know that now. And many of us who have been working with TVA to try to improve its long range planning have known that and been advising TVA to, hey, if you want to reduce the total revenue requirement, you want to make it cheaper on local power companies and cheaper on end use customers, we've got to lean into distributed energy resources. On the second question, I'll just reiterate something that I think Maggie said earlier. TVA, even compared to many other utilities, has a massive amount of hydro and already existing gas resources. So when we think about stability with intermittent resources like renewable energy, even without things like battery storage or EVs or energy efficiency, demand response that help us move load and make it more flexible so that we can meet the needs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week type of thing. TVA is in a better situation than everyone else to manage that intermittency. And then once we start layering in those other assets like energy efficiency and demand response, we really can get there. So I think that the myth there from TVA is especially pernicious compared to the myth perpetuated by many other utilities because it has so many ramping resources already in its fleet.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today for our Clean Up TVA Coalition launch. Just as a few parting messages, we do have a website that just launched today as well. You can find us at cleanuptva.org. We have an action page on the website. It's cleanuptva.org/actions. You can find us on Twitter. We're at cleanuptva. We haven't tweeted anything yet, but stay tuned there. We'll be putting out some content soon. And I also had someone ask about joining the coalition. If folks want to join, we have a way for folks to fill out a form on our website. You can visit cleanuptva.org/get-involved. So thanks again, everyone, for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.